I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Law Firm Owner Podcast, episode number 232. Welcome to the Law Firm Owner Podcast, powered by Velocity Work, for owners who want to grow a firm that gives them the life they want. Get crystal clear on where you're going, take planning seriously, and honor your plan like a pro. This is the work that creates velocity. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm so thrilled you're here. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I think there will be something for each of you listening to this to be able to walk away and do for yourself that will make your world easier. It may just be a question to ask yourself. It may be a specific task that needs to be done. But what we're covering today is open tabs. So let me give you some context. About 10 years ago, I had a mentor that introduced me to this concept. I think about it a lot. If you can imagine that your brain is a browser, and inside of your brain, in the browser, there are many open tabs. And so the first question that I would ask yourself is, how many open tabs do you have in your brain right now, if your brain was a browser? And even if you can't count, right? Like you don't know, but it's a lot. What we're going to be talking about today is how to close those tabs and how you need to think about it, what you can do to actively close tabs. But when you can reduce the number of tabs that you have open, the number of loops you have open, the number of files you have open, however you want to think about it. But for me, it makes sense like tabs in a browser. The more of those you can close, the healthier you will be, the healthier your firm will be, and the more productive and efficient things will be in your world. So it's a concept that I think most people listening to this have so many things going on that there's a lot of open tabs in their brain. So today's episode is a chance to help you push pause and get sorted with the tabs that are open and make some decisions, create some certainty around what is going to get closed out and how. So the first thing I want you to do is to sit down and I want you to write down all of the things that your brain is holding on to that are things that need to be done, that may have been started but not finished. Maybe they haven't been started, but your brain is hanging on to it. Now remember, David Allen has a quote that says, your brain is meant for processing, not for storage. But we hang on to all these things. And so if you think of your brain as a browser and it's holding on to all these open tabs, then you can see where the inefficiency and things get clogged. You can't use your full brain for processing and producing results because it's hanging on to so many things and it's already sort of tucked in so many different areas that real headway isn't being made in any given area. You want a sense of completion. A sense of completion does a lot of good for our psyche, but a sense of completion also is what creates results. When you get stuff done, that's what creates results. And as we approach the end of the year, things tend to ramp mentally for people because there's so many things going on, not just with work, but certainly closing loops with work, but also in our personal lives, things tend to ramp because of the holidays and because of things going on, maybe travel, maybe gifts, maybe plans, parties, whether you're hosting or attending, all of that, right? You're preparing for the end of the year, and there's a lot that comes with that. Today, this episode should serve as you taking stock of some things and making some decisions on what you're going to do to ensure that you are closing as many files as possible, and you're being very conscious and intentional about what files you're going to close. So the first question that you're going to answer, and you need to sit down and be able to document this, whether it's in a digital document or pen and paper. What loops do you have open? What browser tabs are open in your brain? And I mean all of it. Some things are going to be small matters. Some things will be bigger deals. What is open in your brain that needs tending to? And you don't want to close the tab because you need to tend to it. And maybe in a small way, maybe in a big way. What are all of those tabs that are open? Make a list of those things. So you want to write all of that down, all of it. And you can push pause if you're listening to this episode and do it right now. And when you think you're done, ask yourself, what else? What else is open in my brain that is just hanging out there? And maybe it's not top priority. Maybe it is. It doesn't matter. If it's an open tab in your brain browser, write it down. One thing that I find when I make a list of this kind of a thing is I will have a first go at this list. I will get down everything I can think of out of my brain that's an open tab in my brain. And then what I'll ask myself next sort of gets to the things that I didn't think of on the first go. And what I ask myself is, what is gray or fuzzy to me in my brain? And so in this instance, between now and the end of the year, what is something that feels like there's uncertainty around between now and the end of the year? And the kinds of things that will come up, it could be something around the numbers. Like, I don't have certainty around the revenue that's going to happen. I don't have certainty around what my expenses are going to end up being before the end of the year. I don't have certainty around what projects are actually going to get done that I meant to get done. So what's gray or fuzzy? And it feels like, well, we'll see. It's almost like you're going to wait and see what happens. I want you to make a list of those things. And that could be in your personal life. That could be with business. It doesn't matter, but it's important to get out of your brain. Another area that sometimes feels, for me, that comes up is gray, fuzzy, there's not some certainty around, is how something is going to get done. So for instance, if I know that there's this thing that needs to get done for the holidays, for example, but I don't know how it's going to get done. I know it will. And it may mean I'm up late doing something, or maybe I'm cramming. I know it'll get done, but I don't know how. But it will. That kind of stuff. You want to get that out of your head too and put that down on the list. Now, as you consider the list of things, the list of open tabs in your mind, it probably will make sense to you to hear that there is a direct correlation between the number of tabs that you tend to have open at any given point with the degree of overwhelm that you tend to feel and the amount of results that you tend to create. So when you have a bunch of tabs open on a consistent basis, your overwhelm will be higher than someone who has a reduced number of tabs open mentally in their brain. And the output will be higher. The results created will be increased by those that have fewer tabs because they're all in and they're very focused on a few things rather than so many things that are going on in your brain. This is a discipline. And I can hear now people probably saying or thinking in their brains, well, yeah, but I do have a bunch of tabs open and that's just the way it is. Like, I can't control that. Okay. Can you just set that down for a minute? Can you set that argument down for a moment to just be willing to look at how maybe you can reduce the number of tabs that exist in your brain, the number of open loops that you've got to be dealing with at any given point, and find ways to consolidate or reduce so that you actually don't feel that same sense of overwhelm. And so that things can get pushed through even more quickly because you don't have as many things open. So you can give more attention to the things that actually are open, that you've decided to consciously leave open. And I think if you are just willing to have a look at things this way, are you going to get down to 3 tabs in your brain? No, probably not. I'm not suggesting that you produce magic here, but I think you will surprise yourself at where you can take the reins that you're not currently taking the reins. So I want you to look at the list that you have, and I want you to imagine each one of those things that you wrote down is a tab open in your brain. And if your brain was a browser, can you imagine how mucked up things are getting and how weighed down everything is getting in terms of processing because you're holding on to all of this? Now, there isn't any reason to have judgment on it. We all get there, and we all have times where there's more of an overload than others. But just have a look. This is just data. This is just information that we're going to play with. Now, when you have that list, the next thing that you're going to need to do is to figure out how you can close as many as possible. And one way that I like to approach this is I will take a highlighter and I will highlight all of the things that I think could be quickly closed if I gave a little space to it, or quickly closed because I'm delegating it, or quickly closed because I'm scrapping it. I'm not going to do it. It's just not going to make the cut between now and the end of the year for the sake of the exercise we're doing today. I highlight all of those things, and you can see how much could be reduced very quickly if you just gave it a little bit of attention. My advice is to start there. Don't start with the hardest stuff. Start with the lightweight stuff and get it out. Close the tab. So I want you to, once you've highlighted everything, you go through, and for each thing that you have highlighted, you'll put what it's going to take to close the loop. Write down, jot the few bullets down. What is it going to take to close that loop? So essentially, you're creating a list of action items for yourself. And next to each action item, I want you to write how much time it's going to take to get that action item done. Once you do that, and you can add up all of the time that's required in order to close these loops, then you understand what kind of time you're going to need to carve out so that you can get that stuff closed, so that it's not still open and running. That is step number 1. Get the lightweight stuff off of your plate. Close the stuff that's fastest to close so that you don't have as many tabs open. Once you actually have time scheduled on your calendar where you are going to go do these things, close these loops according to the action items that you made and the amount of time that you think it's going to take. Schedule time for those things, and when it's time to get that stuff done, you show up and you go all in. You shut down the distractions and you do that action item list so that you get those things closed. Take it seriously. Don't just sit down and start to work on it. No. Sit down, close out other distractions, like be committed to getting this stuff off your plate. You will feel so much lighter when you do it. Once you have time scheduled to do that, so you know that that's what's going to be done, the next thing is to go through the list of items that weren't highlighted and figure out what it is going to take. Make an action item list for each of those things. What is it going to take to close those files? And once you have that, you put next to each action item, you write the amount of time that you think it's going to take for each of those things so that you can understand what it's going to take in terms of time and effort to close each of those files. Now, you're going to see this list, and some of you will say, this is overwhelming. I don't want to look at this. But this is the truth. And you get to make decisions about what you are or are not going to commit to in terms of closing loops. You don't have to get to 0. I mean, it's amazing. If you can commit to that and if you can follow through on that, that's fantastic. But I'm cognizant that I'm talking to many people on this podcast, and I'm trying to meet you where you are. You will know if you think you can get down to 0 tabs open or not. But when you are going through these other things that aren't highlighted, that aren't quick to get off of your plate, then that is where you have to break down, what is it going to take for this thing to get done? Write down the things that it's going to take. What is it going to take to get this tab closed? Write it down. What is it going to take? What is it going to take to get this one closed? Write it down. And then next to each thing that you're writing down, how much time does it take to get that thing done? And then that thing done? And then that thing done? And you can start to see, oh, to close this tab, I'm going to need an hour and a half. To close this tab, I'm going to need 7 hours. To close this tab, I'm actually only going to need 30 minutes. Like, you can start to see what it's going to take to close the tabs. And my advice is to close the tabs first that are not going to take as much time and effort, and then work your way towards the bigger ones, because then you can close out tabs faster. And when you can close out tabs faster, you have more bandwidth to give to the tabs that are left open. So if you can do this exercise, you will create more certainty for yourself between now and the end of the year. And that's the thing. It's like we're running hot. We're running on all cylinders around this time of the year. And as we think about closing up the year, that there's a lot of uncertainty, and you want to reduce the uncertainty. And this is a way to reduce the uncertainty. Like, oh, okay, this is actually what's going to get done by the end of the year, and this is what is not. So considering this is not going to get done by the end of the year, and I'm consciously making that decision because I'm looking at all of this now, then I can set those to the side and I will open those things back up at the beginning of the year, for instance, right? But my point is, you can make conscious decisions that allow you to decide where to put your focus instead of your entire brain feeling overwhelmed because of the number of things that you have got going on. This is a way to reduce that. If you can do this exercise, because you will feel more certain about really what's there to do and really what can get accomplished, then it allows you to feel less overwhelmed during this holiday season and as we close up the year. And the overwhelm always comes from a lack of certainty. I don't know how it's going to get done. There's too much to do, not enough time. That kind of lack of certainty is unnecessary, but we do it to ourselves. This exercise helps you to pull the plug on that and be able to say, all right, this is the deal. This is what we've got going on. And it allows you at that point to be able to maybe reset expectations with certain people around you based on you're looking at the facts in front of you of what's possible, what's not possible. And you can decide what you're going to do with that information. You can reset expectations with those around you. You can maybe get even more ruthless and cut things off that originally you weren't going to. You thought you could get it done, but really, when you see how your precious time is only going to be able to be devoted to certain things, so you just make cuts even further. Like some things aren't going to make the cut. And maybe you do decide to extend yourself, and maybe you are going to work on something for an evening that you didn't plan on doing that. Like you plan on having some more space in your evenings. Well, you can have space, but it means that you can't get all of these things done. Or you can get some more of these things done and you will have a little less space. But you may decide that you like your reasons for that and going down that path because of how good you'll feel after getting these things done. What I'm not suggesting is that you should run yourself ragged this season and be a shell of yourself at the end of the year. But what I am an advocate for is being conscious about what game you are entering, you being in control, you making those decisions. That's what matters. Okay, so now you have everything in front of you. You know the open tabs that you have. You've done some work to see how you can close as many as quickly as possible so that you are not so spread thin among all of these tabs, these open tabs. And when it comes to closing tabs, there are a few things that I have found extremely helpful, not just in my own experience, but also working with clients. These are the things that matter. The first is to reduce your inputs. We allow so much noise into our sphere. And the more you can reduce your inputs and reduce the flow of information into your brain, the more productive you will be. So I want you to have a look at where you can reduce your inputs. Where do you feel like information or noise is flying at you? Where are you a consumer of information? It could be through social media apps. It could be through news sites. It could be through groups that you're a part of that, if you're really getting honest, they do not add the value that they should be adding. I just left an entrepreneur group that is supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread. And I have been working hard in there to keep trying to plug in and find ways to plug in and stay connected, even though it kind of feels like an annoyance. No matter how much I plug in, it feels like it's in the way. It feels like something I have to pay attention to that's not actually giving me value back. And it's not making the cut. I am reducing that input. I am leaving. I don't even get a refund for leaving, like for the money I've already spent for the entire year. I don't get a refund and I don't care. What am I going to do? Just like continue to sit in it when it adds to the noise, it adds to the clutter, and it does not improve my output. So it goes. I'm cutting it out. Where do you have an opportunity to reduce your inputs so that it's quieter for your brain? One of the things that happens when you reduce your input is not only do you get to closing tabs and you actually start producing work in a way that reduces the number of tabs you have open in your brain, but also it prevents new tabs from being added that shouldn't be added. When we have inputs, too many inputs, and we don't control the inputs, what ends up happening is we get an idea over here and we start something, or we hold on to the idea. And so it's an open tab in our brain. And that idea could be related to your firm and something that's very tied into the systems and processes and how to improve things. But it's not the right time. You have other things to focus on. When you get those things done, then you should turn to this, right? So how do you reduce your inputs? Many people don't control their inputs because they have a fear of missing out on key information. Please hear me when I say the right information that you need at any given point will be available to you when you are ready for it and when you have decided you're going to focus on that direction. If it isn't an input or something really useful for the tabs that you have open right now, it's a no. So I have something that I do. First of all, I control my inputs so I don't have as many as most people. I do that on purpose. And it's one of the things I attribute my high productivity to, is that I don't have those inputs. But if I do see an input of the select inputs that I do have, if I see something come through that's interesting to me, but it's not the right time to open up a new tab for it, I have a place where I can bookmark those things and I can always go back to it later. And that lets my brain let it go and know that when it is the right time, I will have the resource. I know where to go to look for that resource. And so then I'm not holding it in my brain. So reducing your inputs or controlling your inputs will ensure that you're not opening up new tabs unnecessarily when it's not the right time. And people do that because they feel like they're going to miss out on the information. So they sort of open up a new mental tab when they hear something cool or something they think that they should implement, but they aren't being responsible for dealing with that input. It's not the right time. You don't have an open tab that pertains to, then it goes away. So even if you need to put it in a bookmarked area, at least you know and you can trust that you can go back to it when it's the right time and you're not allowing it to open a tab in your brain. You're trying to close them out. And then not only does it help prevent opening new tabs, it also will aid, if you control your inputs, it will aid in you closing tabs more quickly because you're not seeing other things. So even if you don't control your inputs, and even if you adopt a habit of bookmarking things, the fact that information is flowing into your brain more often than is necessary is pulling you away from staying focused on the very things that you want to be focused on. If you can learn how to control your inputs for real, and I mean for real, take the reins. Stop being at the whim of the world in terms of information flying at you and you seeing information. And if you aren't taking the reins, I can guarantee that you are not as productive as you could be because of the inputs that are happening, because you aren't controlling them. So make some very conscious decisions about what gets to be an input and what does not get to be an input, and what times you will allow inputs and what times you will not allow inputs. Something I did recently to really take the reins, and is because I was fighting against myself. I scroll on my phone in the evenings, like before I go to sleep, and then also in the mornings. We all know that's bad for you. There's not anybody out there that doesn't know that that's not a healthy move. But it's like the only time I would plug into social media. During the day, I do not get on social media. I am working and I am with my family in the evening. So that's my space to do it. I would just scroll and scroll and scroll and see what everybody's up to. But I would always spend a lot longer on there than what I had anticipated. And I didn't feel great after I'd just spent a bunch of time doing that. I really should be sleeping, or I really should be a little more intentional with my morning than just getting sucked into social or email or whatever. But I'm basically on my phone scrolling. So I bought an alarm clock. It's called the Loftie alarm clock, Loftie. We'll put it in the show notes. And my reason for doing that was that I needed an alarm, and I'm pretty picky about alarms. I have had an alarm on my phone through an app called Sleep Cycle for a very long time that wakes me up. It sort of picks up on where you are in your sleep cycle. You give it a 30-minute window to wake you up, and it softly wakes you up when you are in a lighter stage of sleep. So you don't feel like you're pulled out of deep sleep. And I've loved that. I've really appreciated it. I can feel the difference when I wake up from a light sleep versus when I'm pulled out of a deep sleep. So it's been a game changer for me in terms of just how I start my day. But I don't want to use my phone. I don't want to have my phone in my room. And the only reason I have it in my room at this point is the alarm. So I wanted an alarm that would also just be gentle with the wake up instead of just a jarring traditional alarm clock. So did a bunch of research and got Loftie. There's a couple ones out there, but this one had some of the better reviews and some things that I was interested in specifically about the clock. So I got it. And now my phone stays plugged in the kitchen. And I go to my room to go to sleep, and I just go to sleep. I read more at night now than I was because I'm not scrolling. And in the morning, I wake up, I open my eyes, my phone is not there to grab. And so I'll just take a minute to wake up. I have some gratitude things I say in the morning, just how grateful I am for the view that I'm looking out at from my room, and just starting my day off really in a calm, intentional space instead of scrolling through my phone and seeing what's pinged me since I checked right before I went to bed. And the result has been more sleep, which, by the way, is a superpower, and better sleep, and I am less plugged into social because, again, I don't get on social during the day. So if I don't do it in a very small window, like after dinner, after my son is down, and before I go to bed, then it just doesn't happen. Man, I got to tell you, I was shocked at the difference it made in my internal state, making this switch to the alarm clock and keeping my phone in the kitchen. My generalized anxiety is down. And it has a lot to do with, I know, the reduction of inputs. I am controlling inputs, and it allows me to stay focused on the things that actually matter the most to me. And when I have more access to my phone and I'm allowing more inputs, which most of my inputs are through my phone. That's not true for everybody. Some people watch TV and watch the news and things like that. Mine is mainly, in terms of inputs, it's my phone. And by reducing and controlling my inputs, my anxiety is lessened, generally speaking. I'm also sleeping better, which, as we all know, better sleep is a superpower in many ways. And there's a stability that I feel internally that was missing before. And I've been fascinated to witness this. It feels like an experiment that I was running, and there's zero question about how much healthier it is to live this way versus the way that I was living before. And this comes down to controlling your inputs, not allowing whatever to hit your brain. And when you are up against the world of technology and all that they put into keeping you tied to your phone, you realize it's not just discipline. I mean, sure, it's discipline. I know some of you listening, maybe you don't have any issues just putting down your phone and not scrolling, and you don't find yourself ever doing that. That's fine. That's not true for most people. These apps are designed to hook you in and to keep you hooked. And it was really frustrating at moments. I'd be like, what am I doing? Like, why am I back on this app and scrolling again? It's like you kind of slip into this unconscious state and you are just at the whim of the app. So making sure that that has gone away, which is me taking the reins in that realm for me. And it was an experiment. It's very clear the benefits. And it's something I'm going to keep doing because, quite frankly, it allows me to then stay focused and stay conscious and intentional with the things that matter most to me, which are my well-being, my family, my clients, the members inside of Velocity Work, and my relationships with a few close friends. That is what matters most to me. And by reducing inputs and whatever that looks like for you, by reducing your inputs and you taking the reins on that, even if your decisions and your path don't look like mine, it's about taking the reins so that your focus can stay aligned with what matters most to you. And if you don't control your inputs, for sure, you waste a bunch of time in a space that's not focused on what matters most. Okay, so that was reducing inputs. The next thing that's really helpful with closing tabs is what I call super thinking. I have done podcast episodes on super thinking before, but super thinking to me is where there is executive functioning with your brain happening. It is more high level thinking. It is meta thinking. It is figuring things out. And if you don't take space for this, you will feel like you don't have any space. And I have phases where this has been true for me, where you feel like you're running constantly and you are just executing. And there is no space for you to think high level about things. It's very hard to close loops. And it seems like it would actually add to productivity because you're just executing. But when you are just running hard, you aren't actually always executing on the right things at the right time. You have to have space to really think about and figure out your approach to execution. And most people don't do that. Most people will, if we're talking week to week, for example, they'll just slam into the week and get as much done as they can and react and respond to the demands that have been put on them in real time. And you want to have more forethought than that. And it's not just week to week. This could be quarter over quarter, month over month. You can have a practice around this. If you are a member or a client, we facilitate this high level of thinking so that you can execute in a very focused way in between your high level thinking sessions. And so if you don't have space to think about and arrange things in a way so that you know what to execute on first, second, third, what you're going to get done first, second, third, and so on, then it becomes a more reactive way of getting things done. And you don't actually line yourself up very well with closing tabs, which will help you focus even more. And so the other thing you need, not only reducing inputs, but the other thing you need is to think about, which is what you making that list at the beginning that I explained, and you can highlight things. That is a version of that. That is high level super thinking about what you've got going on. And when you can take time for that, it always produces more results in your favor, the results that you were looking for, the results that you need in order to close tabs on things and to be able to have a sense of completion. A sense of completion is really good for our psyche. And so it feels worth mentioning here, even though I already listed it as an actual exercise earlier, because, and this will go into sort of the last piece that we'll talk about, this is why Monday Map, Friday Wrap is so important. Monday Map, Friday Wrap is a process that we teach that helps you sit down and be thoughtful about the week ahead and how you're going to spend time and what is actually going to get accomplished in a way that is honest and doesn't just have magical thinking about how much you're going to cram into a week. No, you actually really think through what's possible, what's priority, what's absolutely going to get done, what isn't going to get done, and how you're going to deal with that. Does anything need to shift because you're not going to be able to get it done? Or can you get creative and find a way to get it done without spending a bunch of extra time, right? Monday Map, Friday Wrap is important. It is your chance to sit down every week and be responsible with all the things you do have on your plate and the amount of time that you have, and reconcile those two things. And in doing so, you feel more in control because you are in more control. You are actually taking the reins and planning. And planning is making decisions ahead of time. And then your job is to honor that plan on the back end. And by reducing your inputs, it allows you to honor your plans even more and even better and even in an easier way. You're not fighting against some of the inputs that you have. So I think you can see why these three things all go together to help you close tabs mentally so that you have less in front of you to focus on. And you can experience a sense of completion, reduce your sense of overwhelm, increase your sense of control because you actually are controlling more of what you can. And all of that leads to increased productivity. So it's like this spiraling up that happens. And so reducing inputs, also allowing yourself the space to think about how you're going to get things done and space to figure out the plan and to think through obstacles and just the higher level stuff and think through when you're going to get these things done. It's the high level stuff. It's planning. That is super thinking. It's planning. And when you do that, then your job is to execute and honor your plan. And I think you could see where these all help each other because you will be able to honor your plan more if your inputs are reduced and you control those inputs. You aren't going to feel as pulled away from the things that actually matter most, that you have deemed most important. So these three things will help you close more tabs, but the most important thing is that you close tabs. Most of you listening to this have so many tabs open in your brain. And if your brain is a browser and you think about all those tabs and you think about the weight of it and how it just mucks things up and slows things up, and then you visit this tab and then you visit this tab and you think, well, I can't close that. I'll get to that. And then I got to go over here and finish this. We hold so much in our brain, and it's time for you to start to clear some of that out. And you have to do that intentionally. And if you take what I've said in this podcast, it will help you do that. And my hope for each and every one of you is that you can end this year feeling like you've made a lot of progress to reduce your overwhelm and the sense of chaos, and you will experience completion with so many of the little things, those tabs that are open, like get those out of the way. Then figure out how you're going to tackle some of the bigger things and what's actually going to get done by the end of the year and what is not. And be able to take a deep breath after you make some decisions about those things and be at peace with what you decide. And then your job is to honor that plan and to follow through with that. And the three things I gave you at the end of this podcast: reducing inputs, making time every week to think bigger about what is going to get done next week and what is priority and what is this going to look like, what you're about to move through in an effort to keep closing tabs, then you will feel different. in the season and certainly at the turn of the year. And that will help you start next year off on the right foot. All right, everyone. I hope you have a beautiful week. I'll see you here next Tuesday. Hey, you may not know this, but there's a free guide for a process I teach called Monday Map, Friday Wrap. If you go to velocitywork.com, it's all yours. It's about how to plan your time and honor your plans so that week over week, more work that moves the needle is getting done in less time. Go to velocitywork.com to get your free copy. Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Owner Podcast. If you're ready to get clearer on your vision, data, and mindset, then head over to velocitywork.com where you can plug in to quarterly strategic planning with accountability and coaching in between. This is the work that creates velocity.